So we're testing out the wheel bearings, and you'll just kind of push and move them around, and if they feel nice and smooth like ours is, then they're good. But if they feel like gritty or like a roller blade, then you'll need to replace them.
Yeah, it should be somewhat tight and smooth. No play, no grittiness. So what are you doing there?
We're removing this back sprocket, and we'll need to bend out these little metal tabs so that that you could take out the nut and take off the sprocket. So we are taking off the back sprocket, and so we need to remove all these nuts and then the tabs behind them so that we could take it off. Let's go. You'll want to lay them all in the order that they go, so that in case like you forget about something, you'll know exactly how they go. We just took off the circlips that was holding on the sprocket, so now we could just take it off. So we're putting the sprocket, the new sprocket on. This is our old one, and you have to line up all these screws, just like that, and then it goes in. So we're just putting the bolts back on and put a little lock tight on them so that we don't so it doesn't come off, and it'll hold it stronger. So we had to lube up all these goose drives, so because we're putting back in the sprocket, and it'll slide in a lot easier right there, right into one of those. So we just had to lube up all these goose drives. So this is the new sprocket on there, and we are putting the lock tabs against the nut. So you'll just take your pliers and get it up against there, pull it, and then so we're doing the rear brakes, and these ones, the shoes are really worn down, and because they're very thin, but these ones are a lot thicker, so we're gonna put those on. And the back brake just works by when you push the brakes, the brake cable pulls, and when it pulls, it just makes those expand so that it goes into the tire, and then it'll just stop. So removing these, you just pull and then they pop right off. Before you install them, you just have to make sure and look at them and make sure they look the same, so that you know you're installing the right thing. So with the brakes, you want to pre-assemble them so that it looks, so that your new one looks like the old one, so that you don't make any mistake, or so you don't make any mistakes on how to. So we're spraying it with brake cleaner so that on all the places where the brakes will touch, so that'll be nice and clean and newer. So we're just going to apply some grease to right here and right here, so that it doesn't squeak and it makes it a lot newer. So when you're putting on your brakes onto the brake hub, you want to apply pressure so that the springs don't fall off when you're putting them on. So just going to put it on, push down to one side.
Careful not to cramp your fingers.
Yep, and
good work. You got rear brakes successfully installed on the hub.
So we put some grease on the spring so that we don't have metal on metal to, yeah, so it doesn't like.
So we just put a little bit because we don't want that grease to fling around inside that brake hub.
We have everything laid out to how we're gonna put it on when we put it on the bike. So we have our axle, which we already have lubed up, and the two spacers on the side, whichever side they're gonna be on, and then our castle nut, which goes on that side. So it'll just all go in. We put the back tire on, and we have put the axle in there, and so now we just need to start reconnecting all our parts. And we have this one, and then we have our back brake back here. We're replacing, or we're putting on the new front sprocket. And we'll just slide that on there, and then put your tab on. And you want to make sure that the numbers are out on the out of the side of the sprocket, so that in case you need to read anything on there. We are about to put the new chain on, and we already have both the sprockets replaced. But the main part is we made this back tire. In one of the earlier videos, we had it all the way at the back, and the chain was loose, so that's how we knew we had to get a new one. And so we want stretching room, so we moved it all the way up to the second one and made it even on both sides of the tire. We just installed the chain, and we slid the master link through the back to the front, and then we are going to take this little one and we're going to put it right on there. Let's see if I can get this fast. Okay, well, but then you're going to put this one on there, and it has to be pointing towards the front. So the open part is the back end, and the sealed part is the front, and you want the sealed part always facing the front, because that's how the bike's gonna move. Okay, so right now we're installing the master link clip, and you're just going to take the pliers, get them lined up, and then just squeeze, and it should pop right on. So we are twerking it right now. You have to make sure you have your chain on and you get it on here. But since it's calibrated, you don't want to drop it, so you're going to keep your hand under here, and then you're going to pull up with this hand and push down with that hand, and then it'll beep when you get there. But you have to make sure to hold the brake on the other side so that it's calibrating right.
What are you doing?
We're cutting off this grip so that we could put our new one on. We're spraying carburetor cleaner in the grip so that we'll slide it on and it'll go on nice and easy, but then when it dries, it'll get really nice and stiff on there. So we are going to remove our forks because there's a leak in them, and so we're just gonna loosen these pinch bolts and then slide them all the way off, and we have to take off this stuff. Slide this out real quick. So we're removing the fork legs, and when you remove them, you just have to pull and twist on them, and then they'll just slide right out. Loosen the pinch bolts, and now we're just gonna pull the fork leg out, and you just have to spin it and kind of pull, and then it'll just eventually come out, and it'll just slide right out. This is our fork leg, and to start we're going to drain it. So take your little screwdriver and take off the drain screw right here. So we're gonna have all this stuff so we can lay it out, because we took apart our other one and it's a little confusing on how to put it back together. So we're gonna take this one apart and lay it out nice so we know exactly how it goes back together. And so we're just gonna drain this now that we have our drain screw out. So we're taking the top cap off, and since the bottom's down there and that's the bottom drain screw, and it's all drained out. We're gonna lay the top stuff up here. So just take this out, lay it out down right there. Maybe there's some other stuff in here. Oh, there's their schlong. We're unscrewing the fork seal collar, and this one's a little different than most motorcycles because it has a screw collar instead of having a little clip, and so we have to unscrew it and then it'll all slide right out. Get it done unscrewing. Now we're just sliding off that, setting it down. We are putting in the seal, and we have it already in there, and you first put it in with your fingers to make sure it's perfectly flat, and then you take socket about the same size but a little bit smaller because it has to go all the way in and it doesn't just sit on the top. Then you'll put it on top of that and either hammer it or push it down. So we have the seal in there, and so we're just going to take a little bit of grease, just a tiny bit, and put it on our finger. Then you just dab it in around that seal to help keep it conditioned in there. But now we are gonna clean each individual part so that we can't lose which way they went into the fork leg. So right now we're putting on this seal cap, and we're using a little plastic bag trick that we already slid this one on, and we will take this and put it on that plastic bag. Oh wait. And then you'll just move it around like that, but very small, so that it'll get on there and doesn't get caught on anything. Oh, and there it goes. And you're just gonna slide it down like that. Pull out this plastic. Slide it all the way up. Oh, wait, it'll go up here. So we're just reassembling it, and so we put it back together exactly how we had it. Okay, so here's our fork, and we emptied it out, took it all apart and cleaned it all, and now we have it so we can get a little pressure, but our spring wasn't strong enough to hold it by the spring itself, so we just took a little piece of PVC pipe that fit in there perfectly, and we cut off a piece and put that on the spring to make it more sturdy, and now it's nice and tight. So we're sliding back on the forks. So you just slide and twist while you're getting it on there. And if it's a little tough, you could put a little oil on it, but ours aren't too tough. And then you get it up there, and once you get it all the way through the top, like that, you can just tighten your pinch bolt a little bit. So we have our torque settings to 21 foot-pounds. And so right there, it just says 21.5. And then when you start tightening it, but when you start tightening it, it'll beep when it gets to 21 foot-pounds. So we have our tire in, and we still need to put this one in, but right here there's a little notch that goes in with the fork, and you have to make sure that's lined up before you could put it on and fully attach it. Then you'll just slide it through here. So right now we are tightening the axle pinch bolt to 18 foot-pounds. Okay, right there. And there we go. So right now we're just putting up back on the brake cable. So we put on our brake and we are just tightening this. And if your brakes ever come loose, you could just retighten this down a little bit. So this is our carburetor, and we bought a rebuild kit for it and we cleaned it and everything, so now we're just gonna start putting it back together. So we have it mostly put together, and we're just putting the pirate jet back in, and you have to find a screwdriver that fits that little hole. Make sure you get it in there. Okay, so we are installing the carburetor until we've added everything in, and then you just take your nuts and just screw them on.